So as you can see on the screen, I have divided my time map into, different stages of life. So the first stage is about primary and secondary schools. The second one is university life. And then we have masters in Australia, then coming back to Vietnam for the teaching career. And then after that, PhD in both Australia and Vietnam. And because, sorry.
It's okay.
Because there are different stages of my life, then I separated them out from each other with the lines like this. And then they have different colors because actually they are different from each other.
Oh, yeah, I can see a little bit different there.
For primary and secondary school study, then because it was all in Vietnam, and then if you are my age or even a little bit younger than me, and if you went to school in China, then I think that you partly or to some extent understand the traditional study styles. Like in Vietnam, then we study for exam. So I was considered a good child if I was a good student at first.
Yeah.
So years studying and learning and try to become the best student of the class, of the school, even of the province, and then of the nation. That's all things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Traditional study styles is very interesting word. And after that, I can say first contact with and English.
Yeah.
And Western thoughts. Did you study to second language when you in the primary school?
Yeah, I think I was luckier than many of my friends of the same age, because in Vietnam at that time, in my time, then the students started learning English when they started their secondary school. But to me, at my school, it was, I don't know how to call it in English, but it was a little bit special. It was a special program in which students had their first contact with English when they was in grade 2. Yeah, as far as I remember, grade 2. It was just hello, how are you, and I'm fine, thank you, and you, that sort of things, and numbering and counting and that sort of thing. Very, very simple. But at that time, then I had, I think, very early contact with English. Yes. And I like the language. I like the language very much. Yeah.
Okay. And how about now? Do kids in Vietnam start to learn English when they're in primary school or in the secondary school still?
Well, officially, according to the government's policy, then for state schools, then it should start from grade 3. However, for private school, then it starts from grade 1. And from the, I mean, just parents' needs and wants, then they may have their children learn English from, year 2 or 3, just from when they are, since they are 2 or 3 years old, as soon as possible, as early as possible. Yeah.
And let's have a look on the right side at bottom, the first dream of study
abroad.
Abroad global. Sorry. What does that mean?
Well, I remember when I was in high school. I mean, at that time, then internet appeared in Vietnam. Like that was the first time we knew about internet, about the life out there in other countries, and we all had Yahoo account.
Yeah, I remember that.
Long ago. Yeah, and
this company probably doesn't exist anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then we have, I would say, the chat room, Yahoo chat room. I remember that many of my friends after school, they went to the internet shop, I don't know, internet cafe, or just the shop in which they have, different computers for people. At that time, games were still not popular like now. And we got on the internet and have some, chat with people around the world, the people that we even didn't know who they were and where they were from and things like that. So at that time, then we knew about other countries, we knew about studying abroad, and it was like I had my first dream of, studying abroad at that time. But during that time, then we didn't have enough information. Like we didn't have a lot of agency like now. When you want to study abroad, then you approach them. We have an agent, and then your agent will help you to find scholarship and contact with the school out there and do every paperwork for you. But at that time, then we didn't have that sort of support, and it was just okay. Dream was dream. Just that's it.
Yeah, and I can see the green light here showing university life, westernized education. Is that around that time you start to think about go abroad for study?
For my university life, then
The green one.
yeah, the green one. Okay, so we moved to the green one. Like I had my primary and secondary school in my hometown. The city about 80 kilometers to the north of the capital city.
Yep.
And then after that, when I entered university, I moved to the capital city to live and to learn, to study. And then that was the very first time I was, living away from my parents. And then I think that because I was trained to be a teacher of English, the atmosphere, the curriculum, and all the things that I learned there was quite, I have to say, Western. Because many of my teachers, many of my lecturers also came back from Australia after their masters and PhD degrees, and they took all the good things that they had learned from Australia back to Vietnam and applied to their teaching there, and we learned from that. We learned from those approaches, and I think that it was kind of the most influential time of my life. Yeah.
Do they always talk about the positive part of their experience studying abroad, or sometimes they talk about some potential challenges too?
Well, they did talk about the time they lived in Australia, and they all loved that period of time a lot. And then they also admitted that they missed the country a lot. And I have to tell you that 1, 2, 3 of them now are living in Australia. Because at that time, they were my teachers, and they finished their master's degree in Australia, and after that they went back to Australia to study for their PhD, and then they decided to stay in Australia rather than coming back to Vietnam.
Do you still have contact with them in Australia?
Sure, yeah.
Are they working at university in Australia too?
2 of them are now senior lecturers at Monash. One of them is the assessment manager of Monash College. Because they are so excellent, so they have no difficulty in living in Australia. Yeah.
And why didn't you choose them to be your supervisor?
Well, actually, it's an interesting question, very interesting question. Because I want to, kind of to get out of my comfort zone. If I work with my old teachers again, then I know that they are there to help. I know they are there to help. I know them quite well. I know they are very good, but they are old. I mean, old in not in terms of age, I have to say, but old connection. So if I want to say have bigger network, I want to challenge my study a little bit, challenge to develop, then I should choose someone out of my circle of friends and old lecturers. Yeah.
In that way, your life will be more interesting, more challenging.
More exciting, right?
So let's move to the next section, your master degree in Australia. In here, I can say it's more knowledge, and there's a mark between more knowledge and not much change in cultural identity. What does that mark mean?
Well, I think that I have learned a lot from the life in Australia during that 2 years. Of course, because it's a master degree, so I learned more knowledge. Yes, sure. More theories and more abstract things in my field, right? However, because when I went to Australia, I went with my husband, and I had a very, say, big community of Vietnamese people around me at that time. And that's why, yeah, it was like living in Vietnam,
Are they all international or something of Vietnam Australians?
Well, because I had a lot of Vietnamese friends at that time, then the community is just, I think it's just enclosed, because you are inside there, they are inside there, and I didn't have a lot of contact with people from other cultural backgrounds and Australian people. So I think that I didn't have a lot of changes in my cultural identity. Yeah.
And as you mentioned before, there are differences between the one already grow up here and the new generation grow up in Vietnam. It's very understandable. Yeah. And your master's degree is 2 years, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 2 years, right?
That's good. And what did your husband do while you are studying your master?
He was having his master's in telecommunication. He was studying, and for the first year he studied, and for the second year he lived with me and did some work, like that. Yeah.
And now let's move to your blue lines there, teaching career in Vietnam. How was that, and how long did you stay in there for teaching?
Let me count. It was about 7 years in total. Wow. Yeah, nearly 7 years, 6 or 7 years. For the teaching career in Vietnam is long. And I had a lot of kind of ups and downs during that time. Because when I first came back to Vietnam after my studies in Australia for my master's, then I returned to my old university. But due to some family, I'd say some family matters. At that time, I had my first child, and then because living in Hanoi, then I had no support from my family, and it was a little bit hard to take care of the child without their help. Then I decided to move to live with my husband's family in another province. It was quite close to Hanoi, but I moved to his hometown to work, and then I was no longer a university lecturer. I turned into a high school teacher